everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Joanne Hamburg with the Real Estate Exchange. And today I have the pleasure of having attorney Chris Carrera with us from the law office of attorney David Rochfords. And he is going to host with me and talk about purchasing auction properties. So Chris, can you first tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been practicing law, and what your specialty is?
Oh, sure. I'm a real estate attorney. I've been practicing law since 2002, and since 2003, I've been solely a real estate attorney. That's all I do. I'm licensed in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and also Maine. We do that Maine as well.
Wow.
I live in Rindge, New Hampshire, which is just over the border near Winchendon.
Yep, we have one of our team lives out by there.
Oh, no kidding.
Nice area. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will try to answer them as we go along. But Chris, one of the big questions people always ask me, well, I want to buy a property. I want to get it before it goes into auction. Can I contact the bank directly, and how do I do that?
Yeah, the answer is typically no. Most banks have a set process and they don't allow people to contact them ahead of time. Occasionally, very rarely, maybe a local bank would make an exception for that, but 99% of the time, they go through their process and their red tape and procedures. So.
Yeah, for a long time, I used to do a lot of the foreclosures and the auctions, and they would show up either through other realtors and MLS, or of course, there are tons of auction websites. I'm sure you've dealt with many of the different auction websites. Which ones have you used or seen in the past?
Oh, so for home foreclosure auctions, usually deal with auction.com, williamsauction.com. You can also find out from commonwealthauctions.com, Orleans.com. Orleans is one of the major foreclosure firms out there. Also harmonlawoffices.com. That's another local foreclosure firm. Those are all good ways to find out what auctions are going on besides your local newspaper.
Yeah, the newspaper is great, especially for tax foreclosed properties where the towns are taking over and going to be selling them at auctions.
Yeah, and most of the time you can actually go to the town's website and see if there are any upcoming auctions for tax property.
I'm a pest at the Lunenburg assessor's office. I'm always wondering if anything's coming up. Right. So, sometimes folks will ask this just on a different thought, but what happens if your property is going up for auction and you want to stop the auction process? Is there, something that could be done for the homeowner to try to buy some more time so that they don't lose their property? There's a little bit different end of it, but just to let people know that there are ways that someone who owns a property who's in that position could, slow the process down or, stop it.
Absolutely. If you can always file a mortgage modification application. Massachusetts has very good laws on that, and the mortgage company is obliged to work with you, provided you qualify. If it's at the very last minute and you need to file a bankruptcy, you can do it right up until the minute before the auction starts. I've actually done that for people. In New Hampshire, if you're dealing in New Hampshire, you can do a Superior Court action, which stops the lawsuit as well as bankruptcy. So,
yeah, so what happens? All right, so say I'm at the auction and the sellers who own the property now decide that's it, I'm going to claim bankruptcy. And we're physically at the property. Will the auctioneer be notified? Will that affect me buying the property? I mean, communication is going to be key there.
Yeah, absolutely. If the bankruptcy is officially filed and logged in a minute before the time of the auction, then the auction is frozen. Most of the time the auctioneer would know but sometimes with those very last minute bankruptcies, they might not find out until later, and then you know, unless something happens with the bankruptcy, maybe it's dismissed, then you wouldn't actually be able to buy the property because the bankruptcy law, you know, puts a freeze on all foreclosure actions and debt collection efforts.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never had that happen, thank goodness. But do you see that there's any special process with buying a house at auction versus buying a traditional home that's listed with a real estate agent?
When you buy at auction, typically you have a contract, you have to put down, you know, $5,000 deposit and then close within 30 days. It's an as-is sale. The only thing that's really going to save you is if the title's flawed, then you can get out of it and get your money back that way. You know, it's very important to do a title search, have an attorney do a title search, you know, prior to having that foreclosure deed recorded in your name. And it's very important to make sure the foreclosure process was done correctly. And there's a checklist we use to make sure that they did everything properly with the foreclosure.
What about doing a title search prior to attending the auction? You see a property that's coming up for auction and you're like, geez, I really would like to buy this, and you really want to go for it to try to make it work. What do you suggest regarding, should you try to do a title search on it prior to
Um,
hear what kind of, liens or problems there could be?
yeah, I mean, I can do that. I do that for my investor clients if they want to know like how much taxes. Sometimes you buy and you pay the outstanding taxes, but most of the time everything's caught up at the closing table 30 days after the foreclosure. But I can do that. I do a quick search for my investor clients just to see what you're looking at. But you know, at the end of the day, you have that 30 days to do the full title search and to make sure that the bank pays all the liens.
Yeah, you want to make sure the taxes are paid and all the back bills and that you're not purchasing a property that has any kind of liens on it.
Yeah,
That
well,
you'll get stuck with, like a mechanic's lien or something. You want to make sure those are all taken care of.
yeah,
I know I've had people in the past also mention to me, well, how do I know, like, what's the best way to learn about foreclosures and or auction properties? And I always suggest, what, go attend an auction,
yeah,
see what it's about. And, most of the times, or pretty much every time when there is an auction, there's different types of auctions, but they'll have an auction, but they'll always disclose how much money you need to bring. It's usually, if, like you said, a $5,000 earnest money deposit. Sometimes it's more depending on the property.
yeah,
And they usually recommend that you bring a bank check made payable to yourself so you can endorse it over to the auctioneer if you're the winner.
yeah,
But they usually outline the terms of the property right then and there.
yeah.
Um, and the difficult thing is, as you know, some of the properties you're not able to see prior to actually showing up at the auction.
Yeah, that's the risk you take. A lot of people try to go look in the windows as long as there are no occupants there. Sometimes there are people there, and that can be a problem. But you know, if you're getting the property for a good price, hopefully you've done some numbers and you know how much you're going to have to, you know, have some idea of what you're going to put into it to be able to flip it and make a profit, or to hold on to it and still make money. You know?
And especially like here in Lunenburg, we still have a lot of areas that have private sewer. So I will call the local board of health and see if they have any documentation regarding the septic system.
Well,
When was it installed? Has it ever had a Title V? Did it pass? Because that can be a very expensive, you know, thing that a buyer is going to have to endure when they purchase the property.
yeah,
The other thing
you're supposed to get it inspected within 6 months after the foreclosure, and then if it fails, you'd have 2 years to, you know, after that to fix it. But
yeah.
yeah, it could be a very expensive undertaking.
Well, and the other thing you mentioned is what if somebody's living in the house? It's not like you can go in whenever you want, or you can actually see it. And if you end up buying the property and it's occupied, now being the new buyer, I would assume you're ultimately responsible for removing the tenant or the previous owner.
Yeah, you know, and federal law gives the tenants at will, which are the tenants without a lease, 90 days notice to leave a foreclosed property. The tenants with a lease are supposed to be able to stay there until the end of their lease unless unless you plan on occupying the property, then you can give them 90 days notice as well. Um,
So would a homeowner be a tenant at will then, once you close on the property?
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, they would be considered a tenant in sufferance. So they're not actually supposed to be there because of the foreclosure, but you still have to give them 90 days notice and go through the eviction process, which could take up to, 2.5 to 3 months or longer if they go to appeals court.
Mm.
But I've had clients buy properties with occupants there, and they generally do move out. As long as they usually have my clients offer them some money to move out, and that's the easiest, fastest way to do it, because as you know, in Massachusetts, it's a tenant state, although
Yeah.
the laws are geared towards tenants.
Yeah, we used to call that cash for keys when I was doing
Yeah,
foreclosures for Fannie Mae.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I remember those
cash for
days.
keys. Yeah, not a fun thing to have to evict someone who's been living in a property, and it can be a little challenging. But some of the auction properties, and this is why you want to, like, make sure to watch the different auction sites and the newspaper to see, if a property is going up for auctions, there are some that are empty and they will arrange for inspection or viewing, so that you can see the property before the auction, which,
Yeah, especially the ones that you can find that are already bank owned, like on auction.com. You're able to inspect and view, and that might allow you to get a conventional loan of some kind, but you can also buy, at foreclosure, you can buy with cash or you can buy with hard money. It's kind of hard to do it with conventional because they bank usually wants to see the
yeah, they
inspection.
want to close in 30 days. I mean, that's why I think it's important that home buyers, no matter what they're buying, get pre-approved immediately. The sooner they get pre-approved, so we know what price range they're in, and then get to the next step that you're pretty much have commitment without the appraisal and having the final property. This way you're ready to go and you could schedule a closing in 30 days. And as long as you're working with your loan officer, they're usually pretty good at being able to make that happen. And the banks will sometimes work with you if you need an extra week or something, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So,
they generally do, yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes you can run into a delay in getting the foreclosure documents. I had one client up in New Hampshire who bought a property at auction, and it ended up taking a year for the bank to actually sign the deed over to him.
Wow,
But
that's
that's a very rare occurrence. Most of the time they'll get the deeds out to you in time for the closing, but
when you do the title search and stuff, you're basically checking for like back taxes. Are you looking at any of that? Or if there's any other
so
liens on the property, like betterment's paid off, or
yeah, I'm looking for, we're doing a 50-year search in Massachusetts, and in New Hampshire, it's about a 40-year search, but we're looking at every document. We're looking to see if there's any problems with the title. We're looking to see if there are betterments. I generally, I call the town as well to confirm the betterment, because, the betterment can be an issue, especially if there's thousands of dollars still owed on it, and you as buyer would be responsible for that. And then I check, with the town on water and sewer liens, and sometimes electric liens, and there's 26 towns in Massachusetts that own their own electric plant.
Mhm.
I think Templeton is one. Um,
Littleton.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a few out there. Yeah.
Yeah, so
No,
that's what we do. We're looking at 50 years worth of documents. And with a foreclosure, we're looking at the the documents that were sent out to the homeowner, all the various notices that are required, the green card notices, we have to get those from the foreclosure law firm. There's a, you know, a 2-page checklist that I go through to make sure everything was done properly so that, you know, that it doesn't come back to bite you later.
Mm. And obviously, we keep talking foreclosure and auction, but they kind of go hand in hand because in most cases, when you're looking at, you know, single family, multifamilies, you know, even commercial properties, somebody had a mortgage on it. And in order to get to the auction process, they were foreclosed on, as where you have your tax lien properties that would be just the town would be taking them for taxes. So it's a little different, but most of the ones that we usually see are usually bank owned, so they are foreclosed. I just had to clarify that a little because I know we keep going back between foreclosure and auction, but they kind of go.
Yeah, the foreclosures, you know, most of the time somebody's in trouble with a mortgage, and you know, occasionally you see a divorce situation where like a husband owns the property and his name is on the mortgage and he stops paying because they get a divorce and the bank ends up foreclosing that way. I've seen that happen. And you know, when you get talking about the tax title auctions, those are usually vetted through the land court, where it takes the town years to be able to auction the property off. So you know, the titles there are usually good. But again, you know, I have seen issues as recently as last year. I had a client who bought a property at auction without talking to me, and then, you know, there was an issue with that with a mass health lien, you know, I ended up getting it all resolved for him, but it was a nail biter.
Yeah, no, I bet it, I bet, you know, that's
So,
a lot. You know, being thinking about buying an auction property, what would be like the biggest thing that you think would be the largest concern for someone when they're looking at doing that? What would be like they should look out for or keep an eye out for?
you know, price. That's obviously you're a key player, you know, as a realtor, because I have no idea, you know, what a good price is or how much, you know, price and condition are the biggest things to look out for.
Yeah,
Um,
because pretty much all the liens are paid at closing, so
yeah, they're either, yeah, the water liens, the sewer liens, the tax liens, they're all taken care of at the closing, and then all the junior lien holders are foreclosed, so there shouldn't be any issues later with that kind of stuff. And you know, my job is just to make sure all that's done properly. But you know, but with you, obviously you know, the price and condition are the biggest things.
doesn't matter if it's an auction property or a regular house. Price is the bottom line. Price and
Right.
condition, that's what's gonna sell them, you know? Um,
Well,
I think that's great, you know, I mean, it's there's so much to think about, but honestly, anyone who's interested in purchasing at an auction, the best thing is to just go and experience it, look them up, go to the auction and just be there to see what other people are doing. And, you know, one of the big things that people kind of get caught up in is the whole auction process. You know, I just went to one not that long ago and I was like, yep, I'm only paying 160. And somebody offered, you know, I went 160, so somebody went 161, and I'm like, all right, I'll go 162. He went 163, and I went 164. He went 160. I said, that's it, I'm out. You know, I didn't want to go any higher. I was not able to see the property. I knew that it probably needed a new septic system. The house was, the lady or the people that were living there, whoever was living there,
yeah,
had a lot of stuff. So possibly a hoarding situation, which, you know, it had to deal with, plus evicting her. I mean, it was a nice property, had a good piece of land, but you know, you got to kind of figure how high you want to get because it's really in the moment you can really get into like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, okay, yeah. You get kind of hyped about it, and then you know, you end up paying a little more than you wanted to. So I always recommend think about what's the most you want, what you ideally would like to get it for, and what's the most you'd be willing to pay for it. So before you get there, you know I'm not going any higher than this.
Yeah,
Because, you know, it's really easy to get caught up in the moment, I guess you should say, but
yeah,
I've bought a
stick
few.
by your guns for sure. And, you know, most importantly, don't be afraid. I mean, I've had plenty of clients make a lot of, you know, flipping money, for buying foreclosures and rehabbing them and reselling. The same thing with tax auctions. I've had clients, you know, like I had some clients in Dunstable buy the home of their dreams. You know, there were people living there. They bought it at auction. The lady moved away, and now they have the house of their dreams with an in-ground pool, and you know,
Yeah,
um,
but I mean, but it probably needed quite a bit of work, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why it's, yeah, definitely like you said, stick by your guns. Don't.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where you start thinking, like, I always, like, I'm obviously a realtor. So for me, I can go in the computer and I can figure out what I think the value of the property will be at the end of the day when I'm done with it versus its current condition. And that's something I always suggest, you know, get yourself a good realtor to work with you to talk about, you know, the property you're interested in and give you some guidelines on the value of as it is versus what you're going to do to it, which, you know, can be tough for a realtor because, you know, sometimes people, I mean, I can just tell you from my experience, you know, when I renovate a property, we don't do it like way up here. So it's like top quality. We kind of go in the middle. But I've seen people that have come in and renovated properties and I don't know what they were thinking, the material they used or the construction and the way they fixed it up didn't help the property much. I don't know how else to say it, but you know, some people either go too high. I mean, you have to kind of learn and it takes a little while, but I suggest you just think about where you want to be with the property, how much money you want to invest into it so that you can make a profit, you know, and kind of think about it. And you also want to keep in mind capital gains, because if you're going to just flip it, that's something you want to plan on. I mean, I used to do 3 homes a year and I knew what I was paying for capital gains and it had to be part of the expense of purchasing and selling the property. It was just a cost of doing business. You know, so things to think about. We will do a webinar on capital gains in the future to try to explain for investors or homeowners about capital gains. So something to think about, but you definitely want to try to know your price, think about what you want to put into it, and then set yourself so you don't go any higher because that's important.
And then sometimes you get a property that has a title problem and they'll disclose that. And, you know, I wouldn't necessarily be afraid of those either. Some, you know, depending on what the issue is, you know, most of the time they can be fixed. You know, I had a gentleman buy a nice lot in property in Sterling for like 90 grand. And, you know, the catch was there was an old mortgage that wasn't discharged and he might have to, you know, do a land court action to fix it. And, you know, and I was able to get that discharged without him spending money on that. And
That's
he ended up
awesome.
400 and I think we sold the property for like 450,000 or something. So.
Wow. See, there's the key again of doing a title search ahead of time. So at least he knew that was there,
He did, yeah, yeah.
you
He called
know?
me. He's an investor. He called me. He's like, I want you to look at this and, you know, at this issue because they disclosed it. And like, yeah, I think I can get that discharge. And I did. So,
You know, in today's market, a lot of our buyers are, you know, waiving home inspections, which most of the time in an auction, you're not going to get an opportunity for a home inspection. They're offering over asking price, which obviously at an auction, you're bidding and that's what you're going to get it for. Is there anything you can think of that someone could do at an auction that would help improve their position for being able to win the bid?
um, not really. I mean, I would just say the bank is going to want the price they want. And,
I
you
think the
know,
big thing too is being a cash buyer.
that
Anyone who
might
can come in
help.
as a cash buyer, that can help. And, you know, a lot of times these banks want to close within 30 days. You may be able to close in 2 weeks. That could also help because you've already done a preliminary title search. so you're ready to go. That might also help with,
Yeah, that
looking a little more favorable.
could help with one of those bank-owned properties. But you know, when you're at a foreclosure auction, I think it's just like, you know, there's a guy there that talks really fast, and he's like, you know, 100,000, 500, you know, and you're pretty much going like that, you know.
I like going to the auctions. I think they're fun.
Right,
But
right.
but again, I can get carried away. And if anyone has any questions, please put your comments in. We'd be happy to. We do have about another 5 minutes. You know, but I tell you, Chris, I've purchased a few. I've purchased some condos, single families, and it's ideal if they're empty and you get to see them first personally. Like I said, the last one I went to and almost purchased, not being able to get in it and really have a better feel for the condition, I was just a little hesitant to go any higher. And, you know, 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch in Lunenburg for 165,000 on 2 acres. It's a pretty good price, but if you don't know what you're going to be doing for renovations, how bad it is inside, it can be a tough one to figure out.
And that's why it's critical to have somebody with your level of experience. I mean, you've been doing this for what, 39, 40 years or something,
I'm
right?
getting there, yes.
All right.
I've only been a couple weeks. I just started. I just graduated.
Yeah.
No, maybe not. You know, we're also going to do a webinar on untraditional financing, which some investors might find interesting, like loans on, you know, hard money lenders, which can come in really handy for this type of property. Or for investors that do own a lot of properties, they may want to look at just doing stated income or a passport loan, like showing on what your assets are, an asset. I forget what it's called, but anyways, there's so many different loan programs out there, and just to be able to offer people different things. So we do have a few more great webinars coming up. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us, Chris. And if anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to the attorney David Rochford's office. He has a great staff over there. We've worked with them for years, and Chris is very knowledgeable and can definitely help you with a title search if you need it, or
Oh, yeah.
you know, guide you in the right direction if you need to evict somebody.
Right.
But if anyone ever has any questions regarding foreclosures, auctions, or any type of real estate, we are always available for a free consultation. You're welcome to give us a call at the Real Estate Exchange, 978-582-4339. And thank you again, Chris. I appreciate everybody who joined us today. I don't have any questions, so we must have did a good job. So
Yeah. Thank
have
you,
a great
Judy.
day. Thank you so much for your time, Chris.
Okay. All righty. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.